Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do is a best-selling philosophical work written by Michael J. Sandel, a professor of government at Harvard University. Published in 2009, the book brings political philosophy into public discourse, distilling centuries of moral and political thought into an accessible narrative. Sandel's central question, what is the right thing to do, invites readers to explore fundamental debates about justice, rights, individual freedom, and the common good. Rather than offering one definitive answer, Sandel guides readers through contrasting philosophical frameworks. He illustrates how different moral theories lead to different conclusions about justice, often using real-life examples and hypothetical dilemmas to clarify these complex ideas. The book is both a journey through Western moral philosophy and a reflection on contemporary political and ethical issues. 1. Utilitarianism and the Greatest Happiness Principle. Sandel begins with utilitarianism, a moral theory popularized by Jeremy Bentham and later refined by John Stuart Mill. The utilitarian view holds that the morally right action is the one that maximizes overall happiness or pleasure. This principle, known as the Greatest Happiness Principle, is straightforward in theory, but often problematic in practice. Sandel presents classic thought experiments like the trolley problem, where one must choose between killing one person to save 5. Utilitarianism would say we should always choose the action that produces the most good for the greatest number. However, Sandel critiques utilitarianism by pointing out its failure to respect individual rights. For example, sacrificing one innocent person to save many may seem logical from a utilitarian perspective, but it feels intuitively unjust. This leads to a central theme of the book. Can justice be reduced to a calculus of happiness, or is something more required? 2. Libertarianism, Freedom and the Minimal State. Next, Sandel explores libertarianism, a philosophy centered on individual liberty and minimal government. Prominent thinkers like Robert Nozick, author of Anarchy, State, and Utopia, argue that justice means respecting personal autonomy, and any coercive redistribution of wealth, like taxation for welfare, is a violation of individual rights. Libertarians believe that as long as people acquire wealth legally and voluntarily, they have the right to keep it. The state should only enforce contracts and protect individuals from force and fraud. Sandel questions this view by raising issues like inherited wealth, unequal opportunities, and systemic injustice. He asks, is absolute freedom just if it results in extreme inequality or entrenched privilege? He points out that real-world liberty is often shaped by background conditions we didn't choose. 3. Kantian ethics, respecting human dignity. Sandel then turns to Immanuel Kant, whose moral philosophy is based on duty and respect for persons rather than consequences. Kant argued that people must be treated as ends in themselves, never as means to an end. This contrasts sharply with utilitarianism. Kant's key principle is the categorical imperative, a command that applies universally. For example, if it's wrong to lie, then it's wrong for everyone, in every circumstance. Sandel shows how Kant's emphasis on moral autonomy supports a deeper view of justice, one rooted in universal respect and the idea of moral law. However, Kantian ethics can be rigid. Sandel explores how Kant's absolute rules sometimes conflict with human emotion, compassion, or pragmatic concerns. Rawls' Justice as Fairness. Sandel devotes significant attention to John Rawls, whose theory of justice as fairness has been highly influential in modern political thought. In his book, A Theory of Justice, Rawls imagines a veil of ignorance, a hypothetical situation in which individuals don't know their future status in society. From this position of equality, Rawls argues, rational people would choose 2 principles. 1. Equal basic liberties for all. 2. Social and economic inequalities allowed only if they benefit the least advantaged, the difference principle. This approach aims to correct the inequalities that arise from luck or birth. Sandel appreciates Rawls's vision, but challenges his attempt to create a framework detached from moral or cultural values. He suggests that Rawls, by trying to be neutral, overlooks the fact that justice is often rooted in conceptions of the good life. 5. Communitarianism and the Role of the Common Good. In the later chapters, Sandel critiques liberalism, in both its libertarian and Rawlsian forms, for its tendency to separate justice from moral and cultural values. He introduces communitarianism, a philosophy that sees individuals as embedded in communities, traditions, and shared purposes. Drawing on thinkers like Aristotle and Alasdair MacIntyre, Sandel argues that justice must engage with questions of virtue, character, and the common good. He suggests that civic life and political decision-making cannot be value neutral because our moral identities are shaped by shared narratives. For example, debates over same-sex marriage, abortion, or affirmative action are not just about rights, but about moral meanings and values. Trying to resolve these through abstract principles alone ignores what people care about most deeply. 6. Moral dilemmas and real-world cases. One of the strengths of Sandel's book is how he applies philosophical frameworks to real-world controversies. Among the examples he uses are conscription versus volunteer military service. Should people be forced to serve, or should military duty be bought and sold? Affirmative action. Does justice require race-conscious admissions policies to correct historical injustice? Same-sex marriage. Can the state avoid making moral judgments, or must it define what marriage means? Through these cases, Sandel shows how different theories of justice yield conflicting answers. More importantly, he reveals that we cannot escape moral reasoning in politics. Public deliberation about the good life is inevitable. Justice and moral engagement. Sandel concludes the book by calling for a more morally engaged politics. He argues that liberal neutrality, trying to separate public policy from moral convictions, can lead to apathy or disconnection. Instead, a just society requires public reasoning about ethics, virtue, and collective purpose. He doesn't offer a single theory of justice, but encourages readers to grapple with hard questions, engage in debate, and reflect on their values. Sandel sees democracy not just as voting or procedure, but as a forum for moral conversation. 8. Why the book matters today. Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do, resonates with readers across ideological lines because it doesn't preach, it teaches. Sandel's clear, engaging style and use of vivid examples make abstract theories feel immediate and relevant. Whether discussing free markets, human dignity, or redistribution, he challenges readers to consider not just what they believe, but why. In a time of political polarization and ethical confusion, Sandel offers a path toward deeper understanding and more thoughtful citizenship. He reminds us that behind every policy lies a philosophy, and that engaging with those philosophies is an essential part of being a democratic citizen. No conclusion? Michael Sandel's Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do is more than a book about moral philosophy. It's a guide to ethical citizenship in a complex world. By presenting diverse views and illustrating their implications, Sandel equips readers to think critically, argue respectfully, and reflect on what justice truly means. Rather than settling the question, what's the right thing to do, Sandel opens the door to deeper inquiry. His answer is not a fixed doctrine, but an invitation. To do justice, we must reason together about who we are, what we owe each other, and how we ought to live.